I encountered A Course in Miracles at a very critical time in my life when I was chief of the Foreign Affairs and National Defense Division of the Library of Congress and had 150 professional men and women working for me and for the Congress to clarify major issues of defense policy and foreign policy. And it was a very rich and full life, a very useful career, you might say, as far as informing Congress about different ways of looking at foreign and defense policy issues. But unfortunately, at precisely the time when, from an outsider's perception of me, my life seemed to be most useful, it had the least meaning. Several quotations became my guide, and I guess, in a sense, the one that was most startling for me was the quotation, "Do not seek to change the world, instead change your mind about it." Now, given the fact that my entire professional life had been dedicated to leaving the world a better place, in effect to changing some of the things that I thought were wrong with the world, and my technique for doing that was to try to understand economics, politics, strategy, psychology, sociology, the Chinese language. I had a great deal of education that aimed at being more useful. And yet as time went on, I became very clear that, as they say in Washington, where I stand on an issue depends on where I sit. So when I read this first quote in the course, it was something that, as people say in California, really resonated with me. It sounded true. At the time I received the course, in 1978, I had been given a job by the Joint Economic Committee of Congress to look out into the 80s and try to describe the nature of the evolution or revolution in American values that would take place. And so I had a lot of advisors, a committee drawn from many different fields outside of the library, and we explored this, and it was for the first time that I suppose I had ever looked seriously at the notion of a kind of collective American consciousness, because my life had really been dedicated to foreign and foreign defense policy issues. I was much more interested in China and the Far East and Europe and so forth. So I just took our country for granted. It was in the context of that work that I really became depressed. In effect, not only was I having a personal crisis in my life with my frustrated search for meaning, for personal meaning, but in my professional life, as I was working with these people surveying where America was going, I began to encounter signals, evidence of a profound alienation among ourselves, American to American, alienation between Americans and some of their oldest institutions, and a kind of crisis of confidence and of identity that was emerging, not only in this country but in Europe.